What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the Division 2. I want to talk about the Division 2 is a massive disappointment to Ubisoft. Now, I've done this video for a couple different games and movies in the past. I normally talk about if a game or movie is disappointing to the audience, the people that buy or watch or whatever the entertainment. But for this video, I want to talk a bit about the sales numbers, a bit about what we learned from the Division 2 in terms of how it's selling. I want to talk about if that's going to be a disappointment to Ubisoft. And then in the final video for the Division 2 on the channel, I do want to talk about the potential for Division 3, what I'd like to see from it, if it's possible that the game could come out, all that stuff. So that's going to be the next video. I believe that's going to go up on Thursday. But for this video, you know, the UK, now UK normally give their, I like how they do it. They give their charts and they say weekly, basically, how the games sell. They don't actually disclose the sales. They don't give the numbers for how many actual physical copies or any copies that a game sells, but they do have a nice little ranking, a top 10 of the games that make the list that week. Now, a thing to note, and a really important thing to note, is it's just the UK numbers that we've heard so far for the Division 2. And what we've heard so far is that this game is selling pretty badly. It's not necessarily awful, but in terms of the first division, this game is underperforming, I think, massively. But there are some things you have to keep in mind too. There's some notes that you have to look at and say, well, maybe this could be a reason. And I'm going to go over a couple of them and also talk about what I think. Firstly, the main piece of news that we found out is the game sold only 20% of the physical units in the first week as the first division did. Only 20%. Now, that's a massive drop. However, the things you have to note is the first division came out on a Tuesday, which gave it more days to sell than the second division, which released on a Friday. Now, that's actually big. That gives it 3 bonus days to sell. So I don't know where that would move the percentage up, but that does definitely affect the game itself. The second thing is that nowadays, and you can see it with Microsoft's new rumored console that they're going to be announcing eventually, in the whole discless universe that we're living in, a lot of games are digitally downloaded. I actually did buy the Division 2 physically, and I believe I bought the first division physically as well. But a lot of people aren't doing that. As every year goes on, more and more people are getting these games digitally rather than physically, and that's cool. That's the way that the gaming industry seems to be moving. A little bit slower, I think, than what they want it to be. Again, Microsoft's new console, if they do that, if it has no disc to it, you can only get games by digitally downloading them. That's a big move to solidify where we're going in the gaming universe. So you have to think about that as well. It's a lot different now than 3 years ago. A lot more people would have digitally downloaded their game than this time 3 years ago. So those are all things to keep in mind. And again, it's only UK. These aren't US. This isn't worldwide. We don't know right now, as when I'm recording this video, we don't know specifically the comparison between the first division and the second division. We don't know the percentage drop of how much the second division sold. Another thing to keep in mind is the first division, I think, was a slam dunk hit that Ubisoft didn't necessarily think was going to be. This game outsold many Assassin's Creed games. I believe they said the first division was their highest selling game ever. So the first division outsold every Assassin's Creed game that we've gotten. That is insane, because when you think of Ubisoft, you don't necessarily think of Division. I think maybe some people do, maybe more and more people do. But I personally, when I think of Ubisoft, I do think Assassin's Creed. That's, I think, their biggest IP. That's their biggest title. So that's a thing to keep in note too. I don't necessarily think a game like the Division, with the Division 1 to the Division 2, I don't think you can actually keep the momentum going that they had. Another thing to note, and another thing that I talked about in previous videos, was the massive drop-off. This game had kind of the Ubisoft plague that's affected a couple of the games. The First Division and For Honor are two that come in mind, in that people play them and people buy them a lot upon early purchase the first week, and then they completely drop off. We heard that story a lot with the Division. We heard it for Honor. A lot of people left those games. Like 80-90% of the people that bought it left those games after a couple weeks. The DLCs would come out and some would come back and then they would leave again. So, when you look at that, when you look at the First Division, there are warning signs. It sold way more than they probably thought. It outsold any other game. It was a solid game. It was a fun game. A lot has happened in 3 years. There's been games that are like the Division. There's a lot of these live action games. Anthem just came out. Destiny 2. There's been a lot of big games that have come out since then. The Division 2 kind of has that feel among some people that it's too similar to the Division 1, that they don't see the improvements between them. And I kind of am in in the middle of that. I kind of see where people are talking about with that, but there's just a lot said about this second division game, and those all those things, every single one of those things, I think hurt the sales of this game. At the bottom line, though, and I'm going to talk about this again for the Division 3, it matters what Ubisoft thinks of these sales numbers. If they're smart, because we're in an industry with gaming and in movies that everything's, and really just finances in general, everything is up, 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 up. And if you can't meet the ever rising expectations, then something bad's going to happen. EA did this, right, where they fired so many employees and people went after Bobby Kotick. People do this because the industry is built to constantly go upward, and companies constantly raise their expectations instead of kind of, to investors or to whatever saying like, hey, we have a plan. We can't always make the next game be as big as the game before. That really is just how things work in general. Movies can't always improve upon each other in terms of sales. Games can't always improve, but they're designed, and the stockholders and the shares and all that stuff are designed to constantly do that. So if Ubisoft expected this game to make more than the first division, if it expected to make, the first division sold 20 million copies, if they expected 25 or 30 million, then that's on them. That's on Ubisoft. That's on them not seeing all those warning signs of people leaving the game after the first couple weeks, it being 3 years old, a lot of games coming out that are like the Division 2 maybe being a little too similar to the first division, so many warning signs that if they couldn't look at that and say, you know what, first division, outstanding, you guys did a great job, we have a brand new IP that's really, really good for us, and we want to continue this. Second one, let's say 10 to 15 million. It doesn't need to break roofs, it doesn't need to break records, it doesn't need to break the Division 1's record, but we want 10 million copies. That is a more realistic approach to what they should be doing, and I have a feeling that's not what they did. They probably expected it to do just as good, if not better, and I feel like that's not going to happen, and what that could lead for the Division 3, well, I'm going to be talking about that in the next video. So guys, let me know in the comments below, do you think the sales for the Division 2 massively disappointed Ubisoft? What do you think Ubisoft is going to do with this, and what do you think this is going to mean for Division 3? Let me know. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys are notified when all our videos go up, and thank you as always for watching these videos. Again, one more Division video on Thursday. We're going to be talking about the Division 3, and I hope to see you guys there.